A visibly nervous MAGA Republican senator kind of freaked out on the Fox propaganda network when he simultaneously begged the vice president to drop out of the race, and then when confronted by the host with Donald Trump's bad polling, insisted that the polling was wrong and that Trump will absolutely win the election. But then why ask for Kamala Harris to drop out? But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we haven't talked about this particular MAGA Republican senator in some time, but the name Tommy Tuberville should not be too estranged, particularly if you follow Pondering Politics, because we've talked about him before. There are more unhinged MAGA Republican lawmakers, but he might be the dumbest MAGA Republican senator. And again, that's saying something when you consider the field. So he goes on to Fox News and he has this very strange back and forth with Maria Bartiromo, where he is simultaneously insisting that the vice president should drop out of the race because, you know, she's not serious, she's AI generated, she's not policy oriented. But also when confronted with the bad polling that Donald Trump faces, suggesting that he could lose to her, Tuberville insists that actually, no, she's so weak that Donald Trump is definitely going to win in a landslide because he doesn't believe the polls. Well, if that's the case, wouldn't you want her to stay in rather than Democrats replace her with a potentially stronger candidate? It doesn't really make sense, suggesting that he's actually in the midst of an irrational panic attack about the state of the election. But we're going to play the clip and we'll unpack it together.
Embarrassing, Maria. We all know that. We've seen that. They're trying to get her elected the worst possible candidate they could put there. But in 90 days, they're trying to get her across the finish line. She's the first ever AI presidential candidate. All done by social media, TV, radio. They're doing everything they possibly can. They'll spend billions of dollars to get her across the line. She is the worst candidate. There's some Democrat senators up here that are wondering, how in the world did she get in front of me? I've been up here forever. I know the policies. I know how to get things done. No chance. Didn't talk to them. She's the one they wanted because they can control her. That's what it's all about.
Well, Senator, what about these polls? They're incredibly tight, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, and yet we're not getting any information about any policies from Kamala.
They don't want her talking about it. They're letting the mainstream media push their agenda, but the problem they've got is things are coming out now. We're starting to understand. People understand, wait a minute, we need to hear this from her. What was that she was talking about? I didn't understand it. How in the world is she going to be the leader of the free world if she can't give you basic 101 economics? It's embarrassing that we would even put her in this situation. She should drop out today and let somebody else run. No. You know, I don't know how they plan on getting her across the finish line. President Trump's going to win this. The polls are wrong. Everywhere I go, everybody's saying, Coach, we have to get President Trump across the line.
Yeah, really. I mean, you want to...
So again, not very convincing senator, and it's seemingly contradictory. And also, it's kind of strange that you're a MAGA Republican senator defending Donald Trump when Trump famously can't answer direct substantive questions with direct substantive answers. Again, he's gone viral recently. So what specifically would you do to lower energy costs? Well, you know, Kamala Harris couldn't answer this question. And then he goes off on a 3-minute tirade. And then the MAGA host in question is desperately trying to bring him back. So wait a minute, are you just saying that they would magically drop because you're in office and they're not? Well, I mean, you know, they would just go down, and he doesn't answer anything substantively. When he was asked at the New York Economic Club about how he would lower childcare costs, he went again on a 2-minute non sequitur spree and went viral for it as a consequence because he couldn't answer the question directly. Imagine simping for this man and then trying to attack Vice President Harris with respect to policy. And we're going to give some contrast examples because the vice president recently sat down, actually it was last night, for a one-on-one interview with MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle, who actually asked her tough economic policy questions, and the vice president was able to answer. But before we get to that, then we have to address Tommy Tuberville's cope. Oh, you know, I don't believe the polls. Polls are wrong. President Trump's going to win. Well, maybe, but as of right now, the polls are relatively competitive, and she's leading him head-to-head by nearly 3 percentage points. How do you respond to that, right? 2.8 percentage points in aggregate. She's winning in a number of swing states. She has the fundraising on her side. She has the momentum on her side. His approval rating, his favorability ratings are capped. He's never been above 50% approval. He's never reached 50% approval ratings. So where are you going to get Donald Trump's support? Now, the institutional advantages are such that Trump may yet win this election, but I mean, do you really think he has a popular mandate from the American people? He lost the popular vote in 2016 to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes. He lost the popular vote in 2020 to President Biden by 7 million votes. And he is almost certainly destined to lose the popular vote to Kamala Harris, even if he defeats the vice president by way of the Electoral College, political affirmative action, as I call it. So where are you getting this, Tommy? It sounds like wishful thinking. It sounds like religion. It sounds like pure cope rather than anything fact-based. Now, Maria Bartiromo also paid lip service to this idea that the vice president is weak on policy or isn't giving specifics. But again, if you go to kamalaharris.com/issues, you can go into very specific examples. Tax cuts for middle-class families, make rent more affordable and home ownership more attainable, goes into details, grow small business and invest in entrepreneurs, take on bad actors and bring bad costs, and so on and so forth. Protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, invest in affordable child care, and so on and so forth. And then that's just economics. And there are other examples as well. And they contrast, by the way, with Donald Trump's Project 2025 agenda. Then they go into other aspects of foreign and domestic policy as well. So the policies are there. But then you might think, okay, that's on a website. Can she articulate these policies? Well, I say, actually, I think she can. And as a matter of fact, I want to play some segments from last night's interview with Stephanie Ruhle, in which the vice president was able to articulate policy much more cogently than Donald Trump without a teleprompter during an interview. Compare how the vice president speaks during these clips I'm about to play and the questions she's being asked to Donald Trump's interview performances.
Over the last 4 years, there have been tremendous economic wins, and you've just laid out a big plan. But still, polling shows that most likely voters still think Donald Trump is better to handle the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, here's what I know in terms of the facts. Donald Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression when you look at, for example, the employment numbers.
It was during COVID, and employment was so high because we shut down the government, we shut down the country.
Even before the pandemic, he lost manufacturing jobs by most people's estimates, at least 200,000. He lost manufacturing plants. Ask the auto workers how he lost auto plants. We have grown over 20 new auto plants. He has an agenda. Let's just deal with it right now going forward, not to mention what happened in the past. He has an agenda that would include making it more difficult for workers to earn overtime, an agenda that would include cutting off access to small business loans for small businesses, an agenda that includes tariffs to the point that the average working person will spend 20% more on everyday necessities and an estimated $4,000 more a year on those everyday necessities, to the point that top economists in our country, from Nobel laureates to people at Moody's and Goldman Sachs, have compared my plan with his and said my plan would grow the economy, his would shrink the economy. Some of them have actually assessed that his plan would increase inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year.
So this sounds like somebody who can speak extemporaneously on substantive policy questions and has a full command of facts and data, and is also able to put those things in a cogent sentence or paragraph in a way that Donald Trump simply isn't. Let's play some other clips.
So first of all, when it relates to anybody making less than $400,000 a year, your taxes will not go up. Your taxes will not go up. And in fact, under my plan, taxes for 100 million Americans will actually be cut, including $6,000 a year for young couples for the first year of their child's life in a tax cut, a tax credit, essentially, by expansion of the child tax credit. And why is that? Because during the first year of a young couple, of a person's child's life, they're going to need help buying a crib, buying a car seat. And we all benefit when they're actually able to do what they naturally want to do to take care of their child.
Again, she's able to cite facts and figures and tax brackets about her affirmative economic agenda. It also tying into, the restoration of an enhanced child tax credit, which under President Biden and Vice President Harris's administration, that cut child poverty in half, thanks exclusively to Democrats, because Republicans opposed it every step of the way. And then when it was time to renew it, 50 Republicans and one Democrat, Joe Manchin, who thankfully will no longer be in the United States Senate next year, they chose to cancel. They chose to not renew the enhanced child tax credit. So child poverty was cut in half exclusively because of Biden, Harris, and the Democrats. Child poverty was increased exclusively because of the Republican Party and one Democrat. So it's mostly the Republicans' fault. Again, another clip from this interview.
For people who want to buy a home, yes, getting a $25,000 kicker would be great. But it's not just affording a home. We don't have enough in this country.
You're absolutely right.
And one of the main problems are regulations and rules, strict rules at a local level. How does the federal government cut through all that red tape and get down to, the suburbs of Pittsburgh and say, we're going to have to build some affordable housing here? How do you connect the two?
So you're absolutely right. So across our country, people rightly are concerned about the cost of housing. So is home ownership, to your point. We need more supply. That is, without any question, part of the solution. Creating more supply under my plan includes creating tax incentives to work with the private sector and home builders. Part of my goal and the plan would be to create 3 million new housing units for rent and for ownership by the end of my first term. It includes also what we must do to cut red tape. You're absolutely right. It takes far too long and there's too much bureaucracy associated with home building. And I say that as a devout public servant.
There you go. Again, facts and figures, substantive policy answers in ways that Donald Trump simply has never given, certainly not without aid of a teleprompter, and that's assuming that he reads a teleprompter in the first place. She's speaking extemporaneously on these issues. Now, is she always delivering these things with a masterclass economic credibility, like a macroeconomist, like a Paul Krugman would? No, but no politician does that. Not President Biden, not Donald Trump, not Mitt Romney, not this. It's just the standard can't be constantly moving for the Democrats to be, imposed upon the highest standard. We can't do that and then grade Donald Trump on a curve. But that's precisely what's going on. Donald Trump could never give answers to questions this directly, this substantively, in this way. He simply couldn't. And so it's so funny to see Tommy Tuberville say, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. She doesn't understand anything about economics. Compare how the vice president speaks about this with how Donald Trump speaks extemporaneously about economic issues, and it's night and day. Whatever faults you want to ascribe to the vice president, that's fine if you want to hold her to high standards, but Donald Trump could never match her under those high standards, and MAGA Republicans know it, which is why they have to grade him on a curve to compensate for his intellectual inferiority. It's just a fact. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.